Hey,
Welcome, Robert.
thank you. Thank you very much, Jody. Good morning, everybody. And I don't have to worry about time zones. So I'm here in California too. So nice to have you with me. Staying out of court. Tomorrow I'm doing stay out of jail. That's a whole nother topic. But hopefully, I don't know if you've heard me before. I hate to say the number of years I have been at this for. This is my 32nd year doing just this. So, and of course, just in California. And I have my name and info in the chat box. I do not sell anything whatsoever. So if you ever have a question for me, you can email me. Again, no charge for that. I will do my best to answer you. If you're with a company, I do like to copy in the broker owner just so they know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I'm going to go sort of rapid fire here and cover as much as I can. If you've heard me before, I really do have like 15 hours of non-repeating information, but it's been about a year. So I'll do some review and some new material too, but it's a really big topic. This topic of the disclosure of the condition of the property is by far the number one source of litigation against residential agents, only in California, nowhere else. And as Jody mentioned, I think what about now 4, 5, 6 pages, just single space Word document of disclosure techniques and strategies that I've developed or recorded over the years, and they'll be sent out to you. And there's no cost for those. I always like to give a shout out to kind of my hero in public speaking in real estate. I think almost everybody knows Gov Hutchison. He's just a world of information about just everything regarding real estate. And so if you've never, I think everybody's heard him, but if you haven't, I highly recommend seeing him wherever he is. I do not sell anything, and I am therefore gladly sponsored by service providers to make all this work. And here they are, JCP and First American are kind of together. And then Win Home Inspections, that guy's out in the field, and then Legal Services America. And in about 5 minutes, they'll each give a very brief pitch hello. And they'll probably leave because they've all heard me like 100 times. All right, starting on the visual inspection, I'm going to make the assumption that everybody here uses the AVID form. It's not a mandatory form, but since I cover the entire state and have for a long time, it seems to me that I'd say 95% of companies use it, especially the larger ones. There's a sizable company in Ventura County and another one, I can't remember where, that does not, the broker doesn't like it and they don't use it, and they each have 3 or 4 offices, and it does cause some difficulty. But anyway, I'm going to assume everybody here uses it. And notice that it says, I just have it circled here, that it's a visual inspection. So a question that might arise is, does that mean that everything you write down here, or like an addendum, there's not much room here, should be things that you can see, that you can look at, visual? That's what it says. The answer to the question is actually no. Even though it says visual, and that word has not changed since it came out, it really means something different in the wonderful world of the courtroom, or not so wonderful world. It's really been morphed, if you will, to mean any sensory perception. I'll give you 2 quick examples. Let's say I am in a 2-story home. I'm the agent, I'm doing my AVID thing. And as I walk across the hall upstairs, I get the impression, very, very minor and only a couple of times, that, gosh, is the floor a little bit uneven? It's not pronounced. It's maybe, not sure. Haven't really felt that very much up here. Well, that's not visual, but it would still kind of demand, in a way, a disclosure, kind of a lightweight one, like upstairs hallway floor appears to have some unevenness or something. If the buyers are either not going to read that, or if they do, they're not going to make much of it because it's a very, low level. But we don't want to limit disclosures only to things that we can see. Now I'm downstairs in the, say, kitchen family room area, and there's a really heavy, like musty mildew, mold-like odor, and it's just really pronounced. And I'm thinking that even when the sellers move out and the home is like professionally cleaned, this is such a strong smell in here, it's probably going to linger. But it's not visual. I can't see anything. I can pick it up by sense of smell, but I still want to make a disclosure. But just to throw in something here, we got to be careful how we disclose something like that. You don't want to write down mold smell, mildew odor, musty's even marginal, because all of those words are too close to the word mold, and that's a word that we should never say out loud and never write down. It's just way outside of our standard of care. So I'm often asked, well, let's say, Robert, what do I say? I'm not going to write down this part of the house really stinks or something. You got to come up with something a little better. So a expression that I like is obvious odor noted in that area, something like that, where you're drawing attention to it. You are making a disclosure, but you're not setting yourself up for a fall by mentioning like mildew or mold, something that's outside of our standard of care. So it really is a multi-sensory, we call it a visual inspection, but it's really multi-sensory, if you will. And the only two categories that we are to cover on the AVID, in disclosure in general, there's only two, and those are defects and red flags. And just some quick definitions. I know this is all pretty basic. I'm in the kitchen, in front of the sink, the window's cracked. That's my whole disclosure. Cracked window, broken window. It's not a big crack, not a small crack. It's not from this or that, just cracked window, period. No more than that. When we get into technical descriptions, we can be argued with, and nobody's going to argue with the fact that it's been cracked. Now I'm in the living room. I see a stain. Let's say there was a window right below there. I might disclose there's a ceiling stain above the window, in the family room. A lot of agents, though, and I only know this because I look at so many AVIDs, will call it a water stain. That's probably the most common expression. But stains like this can occur from a lot of things other than water. They can be water, usually are. They could have bottles of white wine stored in the attic. It could be a rodent problem. I don't know. And in terms of what I'm doing right now, I don't care in terms of the AVID. I just want to get the wording right. So just stain noted. It's not big. It's not this. It's just stain noted at ceiling. You could say like above window to kind of locate it or something like that. We want to provide sufficient information, but when we get too many words in there, they become kind of dangerous for us to use in terms of litigation. Now, there are a ton of challenges. I'm going to mention just two of them for sake of time. Let's say I'm in the living room. I've got my AVID, doing my AVID thing in the living room, and I notice that there is a ceiling. First of all, I don't notice any problems or any red flags, nothing. It just looks great. It's even a clean room and I don't see anything. I think I got to say something to kind of prove I was in here. And I notice that there's a ceiling fan. A mistake that many in our business make is they'll jot down or they'll type in ceiling fan noted. But a ceiling fan is not a defect or a red flag. It's inventory. So it doesn't belong on the AVID. I'll give you a suggestion on what to write down when you cannot find anything at all wrong. One more example, though, in the challenge category. Some agents, because the home is in pristine condition, and that's usually where this tends to happen, they just can't find anything to say. And so they'll lower the bar down to something like a spider web in corner by ceiling or something. It's not a defect. It's not a red flag. It doesn't belong on the AVID. So what do you say or write down when you're in a room, you've looked around adequately, which doesn't take very long. We're not taking pictures off of walls and taking samples of things, whatever. The expression that in the 3 decades I've done about this is nothing noted. That's just the most popular one. Now, the only objection, in other words, there is a living room. Some homes don't have them, but this one does. I did go in it. I just didn't see anything really worth mentioning. The problem is that when the home is in really fabulous condition, we can have an AVID that just kind of says nothing noted, nothing noted, nothing noted, nothing noted. and it almost looks like we never even showed up. So there is a solution to that, which I'll get to in just a moment. Oh, let me talk about our sponsors, and this will just take a few minutes because they have heard me many, many times and would probably like to say hello and then get to work. So here are the logos. Let's just do them one at a time. Scott, are you in the room? And if he's not, I'm going to text. He's on an inspection. I'll text him and tell him to get in here. So Jackie, JCP, LGS, NHD reports, and First American Home Warranty. Take it away.
I am here. Are we
Okay.
able to show that one page?
Oh yeah. Tell me if I did that right.
Okay, you did that right. Okay, so it's a pleasure to be here as a sponsor of Bob Brand. Always like to be able to get on with Bob. He always has such valuable information. Today, I just wanted to highlight from JCP our Disclosure Insight fire page, because fire is such a hot topic. We have the first page of the report now. It shows whether that property is in or out of a high fire severity zone. And this is really important because it poses a challenge for homeowners to obtain fire insurance these days. So you really want to get the information on this up front and know what you're going into on this transaction or on a transaction when it says in a high fire severity zone. But what's really important, where the arrow says ask us, I'd just like to point this out. On our report, unique to us, we have a link right there that you can click on, and we do the legwork for you. If you're in a high fire severity zone, you click on this link. We have a dedicated division inside of JCP that goes to that actual city, and they obtain the information to find out what ordinance, if there's an ordinance, they copy that ordinance and email it back to you. When you click on this link, that email is already populated to go to our division. You just send it off. We get the information, we send it back to you. It's beautiful, easy peasy. Just wanted to point that out. And we have a great geological division with geologists on staff to assist you and your clients. That's unique to JCP, and we are the leaders launching the NHD industry since the very beginning. I'm here to help you with anything pertaining to the report, and I appreciate your business. Bob, I think I'm supposed to go with Iris next, right? Because she's not here.
Yeah, and I may have to back up on this so we can get you on the right screen. We'll go right ahead. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so Iris Luttrell is the account executive for Home Warranty, First American Home Warranty. We're under the same umbrella. She wanted to promote because she can't be here today, and I told her I would pitch it for her. They have home warranty coverage for new construction. A home warranty for new construction provides coverage for 2 to 5 years after many of the builders and manufacturers' warranties end. There still can be problems that arise on new homes. So this 4-year coverage ends up to be less than 52 cents, or about 52 cents a day. And if you're interested in new construction coverage, don't call me. Call me for JCP. Call Iris Luttrell. And many of you know Iris. She's been around for many years. But I'm here for JCP. She's here for First American. We're here to help you and your clients in any way we can. Thank you, Bob.
Great. Thank you very much, Jackie. And I'm going to try to get back to, let me do this. I'm not very high tech. Scott, I see you in the room and I see that you're unmuted. So say hi to everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, you can hear me. My name is Scott Bernasconi. I'm the owner and inspector for Win Home Inspection of San Jose. I cover basically all of Santa Clara County. I will also go down to Gilroy and as far south as Salinas, Monterey area. I cover residential all the way up to light commercial. Sewer scopes I also cover. And that's about it. I won't take up too much of your time because I know you guys are very busy. But I just wanted to stop by and say hi. And thank you, Bob, for giving me a chance to say hi.
Oh, okay, thank you. And since you're in the field, I will get your name and your number into the chat, the Zoom chat box, so they can refer to you easily. And it's also going to be on the notes. So thank you,
Oh, perfect.
and
Thank you.
and be safe out there. And then before I continue, or here we are for my other, and you want to unmute Virgil and Legal Services of America, and this is something that is just absolutely phenomenal. It's been around for quite a while, taking the country by storm. I have never, having done this for 3 decades, seen anything like it. Take it away, Virgil.
Thank you, Mr. Brand. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Calling you here from the airport. I tried to find a quiet place to give you some information today. My name is Virgil Flores. I'm the owner of Legal Services of America, located in Rancho Murrieta, California. Proud to be here to speak with you, and of course, a proud sponsor of Mr. Brand. His years of service to our industry is something to be admired. I want to tell you that our company specializes in the prevention of lawsuits against California realtors. Although we're now in 3 states, I wanted to tell you that we are ready to face these ongoing commission lawsuits that we're hearing about, because we're going to provide your buyer and seller with their own attorney. When the buyer has a question in regards to the commission structure, as an example, or any other question related to that transaction, as well as for your seller, they're going to have a real estate attorney they can call on that specializes in that area of law, and they can get all the questions they need answered to help that transaction go together legally right and tight. Also, after the close of escrow is where we specialize in the lawsuit prevention part of our business. We'll provide your buyer with unlimited lifetime mediation and dispute resolution. And this will prevent over 97% of any threat of lawsuit from ever reaching your errors and omissions insurance, or we pay your deductible. This is no conflict with your own corporate counsel. Please call on me. I'd be happy to come to your office, Zoom in, or in person. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Virgil. It is a phenomenal program. Just never see anything like it again. After closing, prior to closing, they intervene, and buyer and seller getting into a dispute. After closing, you don't want to deal with it. You don't want it to fester into a lawsuit. They jump in there, and as he mentioned, they have a extremely high percentage of making it go away and not becoming part of your life. It's just phenomenal. And his number is there and in the Zoom area, I mean, in the chat area. So, or you can contact me and get it from me as well. So safe flying, stay away from the doors. Okay, nothing noted. That's the issue where the home is in such amazing condition. It's like, I don't have anything to say about it on the AVID. And there is a solution to that. You know, here in California, not every home, it's probably a little different when you get to like Yosemite or Big Bear or something, but in most homes have like what we might call stucco siding or brick siding. We have wood too, I know that. And on the right, that would be more pavement or cement, like the driveway, poolside patio. It is almost impossible, if not impossible, in the state of California to have these surfaces that are completely crack free. It doesn't mean there's a problem. It's sort of their nature to crack. So it's really not automatically a red flag. But we can also always say this, and you might want to customize it for the home. Some crack, and this is just when you can't find anything else to say. So you want to say something. Some cracks noted at, exterior siding at left side of house, backyard patio and pool area, or whatever. It just shows now, it's not going to freak anybody out. It is doesn't need to be repaired unless they're, huge cracks. And that's even an easy repair usually, but usually not even addressed. But it just give you something to write down to kind of establish that you were really there when you can't find anything else. And if you're wondering where to write it down, my high-tech arrow has appeared on the left there, or not high-tech. If you haven't got it into the AVID somewhere else, you have other observed or known conditions not specified above, and you can always get that in there. And that, here, the cracks here, cracks there, it shows you moved around. All right, next topic, and that is stating the obvious. This is an issue where a agent is representing the buyer, and there is like a school across the street. The house is on the right with the white fencing, and the buyers have been there 2 or 3 times, and there's obviously a school, and maybe they, different times of the day see kids walking around. Some people in the business don't think it needs to be disclosed because it is like an insult to the client, because obviously it's there. There's a Walmart right there or something, but it still needs to be disclosed. The trick of the trade on this is writing the disclosure down quickly, so no matter what it is about that school or whatever is across the street that might bother them is covered within that disclosure. It's a comprehensive way, so they can't say, well, you told me about this, but you didn't tell me about that. Another example, I got 2 or 3 of them here. Where was I here? LA, I guess, I-10 and La Cienega, somewhere around there. It's hard to get closer to a freeway. There's a home on the right. Over the ivy hedge, you got the on-ramp. So anybody who lives here and they can't miss the freeway, when they're buying it, they're going to have, there's going to be a noise factor 24 hours a day. It's a very busy freeway. They're going to have, blown out tires, fly off the freeway, and people hanging around by the on-ramp or whatever. So if the agent said in disclosure, there may be gasoline fumes from the gas fumes from the freeway or exhaust fumes, which is true, living that close. All the buyer has to do, and they're going to be contacted by attorneys, as buyers always are in California when they close escrow. If they're kind of lawsuit prone, is attorneys say, well, they told you about the gasoline fumes, but they didn't tell you about the diesel fumes. So we're going to assume over that because apparently you have a problem. Don't you have a problem with diesel fumes or something like that? So, okay, gosh, now we have a lawsuit over something we just didn't disclose. I'll give you a solution here in a minute. One more photo than the solution. Shopping center. It's a pretty, I've done some work here with the houses above. It's about a half a mile, well, quarter of a mile long, I guess, third of a mile. It's pretty big one. It's got several buildings. And there, as you can see, there are homes above it, and the complaint that and some litigation has involved where, because they've got a big supermarket, big box, and they have a Target and that sort of thing. Some of the residents say we Target closes at 9 o'clock or something. We figured that the noise would stop. But at large shopping centers, there are deliveries 24 hours a day, and and some people don't expect that. So there's got to be a disclosure that just covers all of that. So let's get into first of all, yes, we want to disclose something that is obvious. Never think this is an insult to their intelligence if I mentioned that there's a school across the street or a Walmart or something. So here's the secret, I think, to doing this, having talked about this for 3 decades, is best to disclose what's there. Never write a list of details of what may bother them, the buyers, about what's there, because all they or their attorney need to do is just come up with something that's not on the list, and that's not hard to do. So, for example, we have a problem with the gasoline fumes, a health problem. Well, that's because, as I disclosed, there's a freeway near the home. Oh, okay. Well, we didn't realize we were allergic or had a health reaction to diesel fumes. That's because, as I disclosed, there's a freeway near the house. And then let me back up. And anything else is answered in that. It's a kind of an inclusive disclosure. School is near this property, close to the property. We're bothered by the class bells ringing or whatever they do with the change of class these days, and the basketball practice on the weekend, and the cheerleaders on whatever, and this and that, and the gridlock. And they say, my word, in the morning and afternoon, you cannot get out of our driveway. There's so many kids being picked up. That's because, as I disclosed, there is a school close to the property. And that's what happens to you when you live. There's a lot of good benefits too to these things, but that's what happens when there's a school closed. And on the shopping, and so let me just back up. Not a good idea, in my opinion, to make specifics or a list of them. So like shopping center, maybe something like a shopping center is located behind this property. You know, the buyers say, you know, again, Target, the big box store closes at 9. We hear these 18 wheelers, and you know, when they back up, it's beep, 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 and it's very loud. It never stops. And we thought it'd stop at like 9 o'clock. Well, as I disclosed, there's a shopping center behind your property, and that's what happens at the larger shopping centers. That's part of living there, and it's just a much better way to go. I'll have that in the notes. Let's see, 10:30. So this is just something about this part will be very short about how we want to make sure we stay within our standard of care. Here is where, let's say I'm at the property and maybe the AVID inspection or something's over, whatever, and the termite guy happens to be there, and we're standing by this windowsill, and he points this out. He's probably going to disclose that as dry rot noted at windowsill. Dry rot is a living organism, and he is licensed to diagnose that and to disclose it. But I'm not. I can tell there's something wrong. So when I make a disclosure, if I'm going to here, I will just change the wording. I'll say damage noted to windowsill. Now, sometimes we're having a conversation with the termite inspector and we hear him mention dry rot. Well, we've heard it from a licensed pest control operator. That's probably what it is. And I get it into my disclosure, but it's outside my standard of care. Just make sure we stay in that narrow standard, that narrow window of what we're permitted to talk about and disclose. So damage would work better, just as an example. Okay, that was brief. Here's an interesting story. This is, well, you see a vacant lot here and then a house. You can see the roof line. It's actually part of a big development. You can't see the other houses because of all the trees and bushes in the way, but there's a lot of houses there. So out-of-state buyers moved in. There were essentially no meaningful or significant disclosures. And in the first day in the property at about 2 o'clock in the morning, they just heard this really unusual loud noise. And it's like, what is that? And it's so loud and we can't even figure out what it is. So they looked over their back wall. It turns out that this is a hot air balloon airport, so to speak. I don't know how they get permits to do this, but this has been going for 5-6 years, and they launch usually 2 or 3 balloons. Once they get up, they're fine, but it's just there's a lot of screaming, shouting, noise with the equipment they need to get these things aloft, and they were just never told about it. So they said this is going to happen every day. So they sued for failure to disclose something like this, not on the property, but it affects the property. So that makes it worthy of disclosure. Because keep in mind, I have at the very beginning there or the very top, the buyer should never be surprised. The only buyers who ever sue are buyers that are caught off guard. There could be almost anything wrong with the house. The position the buyer needs to be in is to have been told about it. So if we let them know, they're not going to be surprised. We have to word it correctly, but when we let them know, they're not surprised and there's no litigation. It's kind of as simple as that. So be careful on that one. So is there anything, this is a good thing to ask when we're on the listing side of the seller. You might even say, I've done properties here. I know the area. I don't live too far away, but I don't live right here in your home. Is there anything at all you can think about that the neighbors are going to tell the buyers? Is there anything that goes on around here? It could, and I'll give you another example or two, but that the buyers might be surprised. Wow, this happens here, but it happens, and we want them to know in advance. And that's a secret to disclosure. We just have to let them know in advance. So some examples, since Christmas isn't too terribly long ago, many people have in their community parts of neighborhoods that kind of go all out for you know, they call it like Christmas tree lane or something. And there's one near where I live. And usually my wife likes to get me into the car and drive around and look. And there's several blocks of this, and it's quite an amazing thing to see. And let me back up. Well, and sometimes residents have to pay for this, and there's pressure on them when they move in. You know, the neighbors say, by the way, nice to meet you. Did I tell you that this is Christmas Tree Lane? And we really hope you get on board. Others, the homeowners association does it and that sort of thing. But we don't want them surprised. The only buyers who ever sue are surprised. So a good question to ask the seller when obviously on the listing side, you know, you could say something like, you know, I work this area, but I just haven't done a lot of business right here in this neighborhood. Is there anything at all going on here that the neighbors are going to tell the buyers about? That's a key question. Anything the neighbors are going to tell the buyers about. And, you know, sometimes nothing comes up, even though it should. But if we really kind of stay with it a while without, you know, beating it to death, I may say, well, you know, this is Christmas Tree Lane here in our community, and we kind of go overboard, and that would then become a disclosure, but only discovered if the buyer or the seller didn't volunteer it by us kind of probing a little bit. So that's a good technique to use, and that's really all that has to be handled. Just let them know that it goes on. And there's other things besides at Christmas. There's, you know, other holidays and that sort of thing, some of a religious nature and other days that are not, but it's just good to let them know. Very good. Surprise buyers do not sue. They have no case when they go to court, and they have to tell the judge, well, I already knew about this before I signed on the dotted line. So that's a big deal. Let me see if there's any questions. I got maybe something in the chat. Should you do an email follow-up for the answer to the question? I'm not sure if it's a question I asked, or maybe if you wouldn't mind writing that again. Should you, meaning me, should I do an email for questions asked in the seminar, or should you do an email when you responded to a question from a client? If you could clarify that, and I'll see it before we leave.
Lee, if you want to unmute and ask your question, you can do that too.
Okay, I've got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
If you ask a seller, is there anything unusual about the neighborhood?
Mhm.
And they say absolutely not. And you don't follow it up. And then there's something that occurs once every 2 years. If you didn't follow it up with an email to confirm that's exactly what they answered, the buyers will say, well, you didn't disclose this. So I'm going to ask a question. Is it a good idea to follow up with an email that confirms what the seller said when you ask a significant question about anything else that is of significance about the property or the area around it?
Yeah, I would say it's a good idea to do it. I wouldn't say it's a absolutely mandatory. You never want to fail at that or never want to forget it. It's a really good thing to disclose, to document the conversation. It's not usually a major issue, but it does happen, and that's why I include in the seminar. So yeah, I would do that. I would document it and have that documentation available. And it depends, you know, if it's an airport that well, usually you can see an airport, but something else that goes on that is just not something anybody would expect, documentation is always a good idea. There's a question. Thank you. And you can always contact me if you want more details. Question about verbiage for a neighbor's barking dog. Let me try to touch on that later. The thing about the chronically barking dog is that some people, and I've been involved in many of these, some people think it's a new buyers that are moved in, and neighbors that live nearby think it's a real nuisance, and others, let's say they have a German Shepherd, the neighbor, and the neighbors a few doors down or next door, or the buyer nearby, used to have a German Shepherd, and it reminds them of their dog, and they love hearing it even at 2 a.m. It really becomes very subjective. So generally speaking, unless we know that it's a problem in the neighborhood, and we are supposed to know, because if we're representing somebody in that neighborhood, we should be familiar with the neighborhood. Usually not. But if it's like, I would say, chronically barking dog that's driving everybody crazy, that would be a disclosure issue. And I actually have something about that in the notes too. So you may want to look at that and call me later if you don't get the info. Here's a really simple, this won't take long. A really simple way to take a rough draft disclosure that we just know needs to be crunched down a bit and really quickly turn it into a final disclosure that is briefer, shorter, and a better disclosure. And one of the nice things about this, or a couple of them, there's no charge to do this little practice, and don't have to download anything. And it takes a half a minute. So I'll do a scenario. I'm representing the buyers. I have done my AVID inspection, and let me throw in something because I'm hoping I can get to it. I know that most buyers agents, when the buyer has selected, arranged for a home inspector, the overwhelming majority of buyers do the AVID because they're going to be at the home inspection. The buyers are usually at the home inspection, and it's really, if the buyers sometimes are out of town, they can't do it. If there is any way for buyers to attend a home inspection, that's a really good litigation depressant, if you will, or minimizes it. That's a good thing to have happen. But what is best when it can be achieved is that I have already done my agent's limited visual inspection. I have been able to, even though I'm not representing the sellers, I've been able to, working maybe with the other agent, I've been able to get into the property a day or two or three before the home inspection. So I've already done my AVID. It has a date on it that is earlier than the date of the home inspection, proving I did it by myself. And then when the home inspection takes place and the buyers are going to be there, I want to be there too, but I've already done my thing. So I may be watching TV or reading a book or doing paperwork off to the side. Okay, so I'll allude to that again before we stop. So anyway, I've done two-story home. I've done the upstairs, really can't find much to say. I've done the downstairs, like pristine condition. My last stop is the kitchen before I leave. And I do want to leave. I don't want to hang around and chit-chat it up with the sellers. I see to the left of the refrigerator on the wall in the kitchen, a couple of spots like this. So that's the only thing I've really come across, or anything that seems significant to me. So I want to make a disclosure. Let me start out with the rough draft. We're not going to stay with this. It looks to me, now, if you and I were just talking, I would say to me, it looks like there are two small black mold stains, where it's in kitchen wall left of the refrigerator. But that's not what I want to write on my disclosure. There's too many litigation-prone issues inside of this disclosure. Never want to give numbers. That's never a good idea, or always a bad idea, I should say. We don't want to use adjectives like small. They can be argued with. It's not small, it's large, it's extra large, whatever. We never want to use colors. There is no way on earth I'm ever going to write the word mold down, way outside of my standard of care. So all I have, that's my rough draft. I've crossed out 1, 2, 3, 4 words. What I have left, I have to have there. I can't eliminate that. And I come up with stains noted at wall to left of refrigerator. Ideal disclosure. It's not my job to diagnose what it is or even what it might be. I don't want to have a list. It could be this, it could be that. Just stains noted at wall to left of refrigerator. This is an especially important room to get disclosures right, because a lot of time, because there's water, in the walls and in the pipes, the remedies can often be very expensive. They often involve mold, not just leaking, and the occupants have to leave the house and stay at a hotel and for a month and all that. So we want to get and these can be very expensive to litigate. So that was rough draft disclosure, down to a final one, just by what is it that I can, let me just go back to that first one. I start out with, let me see here. Well, I can't find it now, but I start out with just too many too many words in the disclosure. And I don't want to, don't want to do that. I want to get the rough draft. Let me get here and then, get it down to a final disclosure quickly. Here's an example of a real world application of this principle. I'm sure we've all been to a supermarket, and in real estate, we're usually in a hurry and we want to get in and out. And there's an express lane and we've only got, 6 items and I'm going to go there. I can get through easier. I won't have to, wait in the long line. That is, I won't go into the names of the supermarkets. They do vary between different parts of California. Like Safeway, popular in Northern California, not in Southern, that sort of thing. I've never seen a fight break out, but I usually go to these lanes because I'm in a hurry usually. It's usually 2 guys, and one guy will say, "Hey, I looked at your card, I counted them. There's 22 things there, and the sign says 15. Another major supermarket does something that is ingenious. They have about 15 items. No arguments, no fights, no threats. I said, "You got 22 things in there. It says 15. Yeah, about 22 is about 15. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day." And things just kind of melt away. So we want to write our disclosures to make a point, to document something, but use language where it is not easy for the buyer eventually, and maybe their attorney to jump onto us. We've got to be just careful about that. That's a good example. Let's see, 15 more minutes. Let me just let me do this one here before I forget. I've got great deal of information. Should you disclose wear and tear items? These are things that are like, the paint's peeling, scuff marks, carpet's dirty and all that. The answer is generally no. We don't want to bother because there's usually too many of them. They don't rise to the level of being worthy of disclosure. They tend not to affect the value or desirability of the property, because every property, if it's been lived in for a while, is probably going to have some scuff marks at the baseboards or whatever. So it doesn't really just rise to the level of a necessary disclosure. And if we lower the bar and we want to get every single little thing to mention, especially in a pristine home, then once you start disclosing them, you got to disclose all of them. And it becomes just like overwhelming for whoever is reading that addendum really to the AVID. It's got just too much information in it. So we don't want to do that. Now, here's an illustration. You may recognize this game. I don't think I have ever played it. I've seen other people play it. It's Where's Waldo? And Waldo is a guy with a red and white striped sweater or shirt. And you're supposed to just find this guy in here, and that's how the game is played. If I do this, he's really easy to see. And by the way, I'm sorry to say that he got in trouble with the law. He was arrested recently. I don't know what he did. No, just kidding. Okay, so there he is, and that's the game. You find him, and the game's over. You win the game or whatever. I like Waldo to represent the meaningful disclosure. Whichever side we're on, we want the buyers to know about, because when they move in and they find it, they don't freak out. They say, "Oh yeah, we saw that before. We talked about it. We don't have any recourse against anybody anyway. We wanted to sue, so we just let it go." So good way to approach it. Here's a controversial issue. Let me do another check on the should we include pictures? All right. What a coincidence. And it really is a coincidence. Taking photos and including them in the AVID. And there's probably the most popular is the Glide product or family of products, including zip form. But I'm sorry, zip forms products, and that includes Glide. So if you go back a ways, we used to have like Kodak cameras, and then disposable cameras. And now, since we all have a phone, yours is probably better than mine. We have the little camera on the back. So it makes it really easy to take a photo. I'm not talking about advertising. That photos are essential. Excuse me, I'm talking about disclosure, like the AVID, the limited visual inspection, the home, hanging around with the home inspector when he's there, and that kind of a thing. I'm not a big fan of it. You want to go with office policy, but I speak on this topic more than anybody in California have for 3 decades, and I cover the whole state. I'm often introduced at an association in person by the association's attorney. So I hear this over and over and over again, and without a single exception, every one of them has said, never take photos as part of your AVID. Advertising, yes, but never as part of your AVID. But it's easy because we have, the phones with us. We have to go back to the wording, excuse me, of the AVID, where it says visual inspection. That's all. Not visual inspection plus equipment plus this plus that. It's just a kind of like a hands behind your back, somewhat casual, a little bit focused walk around the property, and that's all. Just a simple visual inspection, competent and diligent is the qualifier, but nothing about any equipment. Now that I'm doing more in-person seminars, you started out that way, and then the COVID thing, and then now kind of getting back at it here and there. I see agents attending that have heard me for years. And, by the way, this is the problem. If you take photos, you will never take enough to satisfy who's ever suing you. You can't take enough pictures. But at seminars, somebody who's heard me before come up, introduce himself, and I've heard you before. And by the way, look at this thing I bring. Like the last time, 2 weeks ago, a real estate agent in the Central Valley had a drone. And so I use this on my visual inspection. I said, why? He said, well, I can't see, if it's a 2-story home, I can't see the top of the roof. So I fly this up. It's got a camera on it. And, I look at my phone and I can see if there's a problem. Of course, I say there's nothing in the AVID about drones or anything else. It's a limited, physical, so to speak, limited visual inspection. And since nothing is mentioned about any kind of high-tech equipment, we really shouldn't be using it. And if you can't see it from the ground or from the driveway or the backyard, you are not responsible for it. So that's a plus side. The only exception that I've ever heard about, and I've heard about it from several like association attorneys, they'll say and by the way, when you're in the house and your first impression is not going to hopefully be this bad, you walk into a guest room, bedroom, and your first thought is, oh my word, what a disaster. This has got so much, I was going to say junk, but no, we'll just say stuff in there. Then you want to have a disclaimer. It's not fair to you. Eventually all that stuff will go away. The buyers will move in. They'll think, well, how did my agent miss the crack in the wall or something? And it's because when you were there, you just simply couldn't see any. So not a big fan of photos. Let me just back up to you see this picture of like this garage. One of the good things about, kind of a tangent good thing about disclaiming a room, and of course this is when it really needs to be disclaimed. I don't mean just arbitrarily. You want to go into the kitchen, it's part of your visual inspection, and it's just like overloaded. Just, wow, I can't see anything. So most agents write a disclaimer, on the AVID and maybe a couple of other places where they write on something, I'll just make something up, extensive personal belongings prohibited, a visual inspection on, March 4th, 10 o'clock in the morning, whatever, of the kitchen. Now, that's a really good thing to write. It's a disclaimer. It's like, essentially, don't be coming after me after closing about something in the kitchen. I couldn't see anything. One of the benefits of that, even though it may not be your intent, is that you're never called back. I mean, 98% of the time, whichever side of the deal, the real estate agent, again, either side, is never called back or notified by the seller. Oh, by the way, that area is cleared out. You can go finish your inspection in the family room or the bedroom or whatever. I look at a zillion AVIDs every year, and it's very, very rarely asked for. So that's good. So visual inspection, not a big fan. Not a big fan of cameras. Let me look. Oh, let me tell you this story. This is quite fascinating. Let me just show you something. I've got a whole bunch of other stuff. Don't get dizzy, but keeps going on forever. So let me go back to that catastrophic thing. Okay, so this is in La Jolla, or was and is in La Jolla. So that's, you know, coastal San Diego, high-end area, a lot of cliffside homes. So buyers were, this is years ago, probably 12 years ago, wanted to buy this home, and the buyers looking around the house noticed a disproportionate, what in their opinion was a disproportionate number of cracks, you know, just things that kind of concern them about the hardscape, like patio and even in the bedrooms and so forth, and things like this here and there. Not, it wasn't, you know, overwhelming. I've been in the home a few times. You just could tell there was something going on. Well, a very common disclosure would be multiple cracks noted, suggest that, and by the way, that's the end of it. That should be, when we make a disclosure, we should not be suggesting who's going to address it or fix it if it even needs fixing. Because sometimes we get the disclosure right, you know, this is what I've observed, but what we don't get right is the specialists we refer them to. So we don't ever have to carry that burden. Just mention what you observe. But anyway, this was written down. Multiple cracks noted. Suggest that the client obtain the services of a structural engineer. The danger here is the agent is telling the buyer something's fine, but telling the buyer, of all the disciplines, of all the ways to make a living, of all the professions, I've decided that this condition in this home needs a licensed structural engineer, and we don't want to be in that position. So what happened in this particular case is the engineer, after looking around the house in detail, didn't find any actual structural problems with the home. And even though the reason they were there is some of the floors were kind of tilted, not exaggerated, but they're a little off, and just different things were kind of separating out a little bit and that kind of thing. So that was a report. This is what happened about 2 weeks after the geologist or soils guy left. The street in front of the house just caved in, and it was, I have some other pictures here. You can kind of see in the distance there. It's by, if you know La Jolla, it's near Mount Soledad, which is a big cross on a hill. So that looks like nobody was killed or anything, and no cars. It wasn't like a mudslide where cars, you know, sucked out into the crevices. It just overnight did this. It was like a big shock to everybody. Here's an aerial view of it. You can see the subject property to the left. Now, keep in mind, they did have a structural engineer before they moved in check out the place. So the way it kind of panned out was that they went to a structural engineer because they were advised to go to a structural engineer. Multiple cracks noted by the agent suggested the client obtain the services of a structural engineer. In this particular case, it was, you know, a brand new home, and they had a lot of like newer lumber, and things started to warp and so forth. And according to the testimony, the structural engineer just kept saying, "Oh, don't worry about that. This new wood is going to cure or whatever. Don't worry about it. Whatever." Should never have said that. A structural engineer is not needed, but I have no idea who's needed. So another term that we can use, I don't know if, you know, I don't know if it's structural. I don't know if it's soils. I just don't know anything. It's not what I'm a real estate licensee for. So a great term to keep in mind is qualified specialist. They say, well, who should I get? Well, that's not, it's like somebody has some ailment, physical ailment, you know, something hurts inside my stomach and this and that. Who do I get? Well, you better go to a specialist, and you're not going to diagnose what they've got wrong with them. So that's a really good way to put it. Multiple cracks noted, whatever you observe. Suggest the client obtain the services of a qualified specialist. You want to put the burden on them that they can ask other people who to get and all that. They're probably going to get a soils engineer or whatever. In their particular case, they got a structural engineer. So for every transaction, recommend the buyers obtain a professional home inspection report. I think that we usually do that. You know, home inspection reports are not mandatory, totally voluntary. There is by the way, I'll just throw this in before I run out of time here. Never ever recommend to a client that they get a professional home inspection, or I'm sorry, a licensed home inspector. There are no licensed home inspectors in the state of California. 39 states license home inspectors. California is not one of them. I thought we were going to take the lead on this thing, and we're not even close to it. So there are no licensed home inspectors in the state of California. Some of them are certified, but that's by private organizations that have some very meaningful programs and really difficult exams to pass. So there's credibility there, but it's not a state license. So anyway, every transaction, just as a rule of thumb, especially representing the buyers, at least in California, recommend that they obtain the services of a professional home inspector and get the report. Now, on some rare occasions where we have seen, like the examples I gave of huge cracks or that sort of thing, also carefully note the issues, patio or whatever, and that they obtain the services of a qualified specialist. And they may say, well, who do I get? Who do I get? The important thing is it's a good disclosure, and it should be in writing. So when it's revisited, if it is in court, 7 months later, and he said, she said, who said what to who, they can put this up on the big screen. You are on record of recommending a qualified specialist. It is not your job to figure out who that specialist is. Now, here in California, we can have conditions like this that really don't mean anything. It's just not really our job to figure it out. So that's the end of this little segment here, and I'm just, in fact, the last segment. By the way, just some pictures I took. This is pretty wild. I don't know if I want to live in that house. It's kind of in a precarious position. And then one more. This was in the news a few months ago. This is in the Hollywood Hills area where there was a lot of rain. See the ground cover in the back there just slipped down. It actually, you can't see it, but underneath of it by the street is a car, a very nice sports car. I think it was a Mercedes sports car that was buried. And this is going to make me sound really ancient, but this is the home of Johnny Mathis, who's a singer and still out there singing, by the way. I think he's 86 or something. So he's dealing with that now. Okay, I am going to have to stop because of just time saying. I have a little thing, by the way, on the next time on the Brady Bunch home. I'm very familiar with it. But by the way, the Brady Bunch home next to the White House is the second most stigmatized lived-in home in the entire country. And then this is the Father of the Bride house in movies on the left, and in reality, there's a story behind that. So get into that and some other things. So got to wrap it up. Sorry for don't get dizzy looking at this here. But lots of other things to cover. Here is my ad for me, and there's no money involved. If you like what I talk about, if you've enjoyed this, just invite me. There is no charge. I do not sell anything. I can talk about what I've talked about here, and I can talk about other issues regarding disclosure that we didn't get to. That's what I do 90% of the time. No charge whatsoever. I prefer Zoom if it's a long ways from where I live in Southern California, but I do still do a lot of travel. And it's just disclosure.info@aol.com. I think I'm the last remaining member of AOL. Or if you forget my name and everything about me, go to not Zoom, go to Google or Bing and just type in California real estate disclosure training, and I'm usually number 1 or number 2 on the list. And so thank you very much to my sponsors, JCP, Jackie with JCP, Disclosure Reports, First American Home Warranty, Scott with Win Home Inspections, and Virgil with Legal Services of America. Jody, thank you very much for the invite. I'll get the seminar notes over to her right now. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Wish you a nice rest of the day, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. And Robert will be back with us on October 22nd, probably to go over more things. So watch the score calendar for that to come up. We will get the recording out to everybody. So stay tuned for that along with his